The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present. Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio. Everybody, to another episode of Positive Talk Radio. I'm glad you're here. And I hope that you'll stay with us for the entire interview because it's going to be a good one, I fear. I don't fear actually anything much. And I'm really excited to be talking to Terry Tucker. Terry, how are you today, sir?
I am great, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
It is great to have you here. And, your life story is something that we can all emulate a bit. And it also, you're also a motivational coach and you work with people to help them live the best lives that they can. I wanted to ask you because I sense this a lot. I get this a lot in the state of humanity right now. And I want to know if in your work you get the same thing. I get two questions that are asked a lot. First of all is this all there is? There's got to be more than just, what I'm experiencing so far. And the other one is, hold on. Have you ever had a senior moment? No,
I'll probably have several during this conversation.
And the other is, why am I here? What am I here to do? And those two are the questions that seem to be confronting and confounding most of us. Do you find that in your work?
I do, and I think we get too caught up in things. To answer the second question, I think the answer is to serve. And I have a strong faith, but I don't put that on anybody else. And I know a lot of people don't have that. But if you're not going to serve your God, to serve your fellow man. And I think it's pretty simple. And I think your purpose, whatever that is in life, and people, especially today, like, hey, it's all about me. I got news for you. It's not. You're unique, but you're not special. But all these people that, hey, I deserve a trophy. I deserve, I got a college degree, so I should be in the corner office with the company car and the expense account and all that. Yeah, so you got to earn that. That's not something that we get. And no, this is not all that this is. If your life is that pathetic, and that's probably a very strong word, but if your life is not where you want it to be, I don't know what you're looking for, because the only person going to change that is you. And that's kind of where I get frustrated with people. I've been on this 10-year cancer journey, and people will come up to me and be like, Terry, I could never do what you did. And sometimes, depending on my mood, I'll be kind of a smart aleck and be like, yeah, you're right. You can't, because you've already decided in your mind that you can't do this. Why would you go into something with the attitude that I can't do this? I'm not going to be successful at this. If you're going to do that, just stay in bed, get a couple extra hours of sleep instead of getting out. So there is more to life than, just getting up, going to work, kind of the Groundhog Day, movie philosophy. But that's up to you. That's you trying to find your purpose. And I always say, people live a casual life. And because of that, their dreams, their goals, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living.
Ooh, very nice. I like that play on words. That was very good. It seems to me that for a lot of us, there is a disconnect. The disconnect seems to be that, is this all there is? As if they are the recipient of something rather than driving the bus, as it were.
Yeah, you make a great point. This is your life to live. You've been given unique gifts and talents, and it's up to you to find out what your purpose is. And I used to coach high school basketball, and many hats that I've worn. And I remember one time a former player that I had coached had moved to the area in Colorado where my wife and I live, and we had had dinner with her and her fiance. And I remember saying to her one night, I'm really excited that you're living close and I can watch you find and live your purpose. She got real quiet for a while and she kind of looked at me and she's like, "Well, coach, what do you think my purpose is?" I said, "I have no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth. And once you find that reason, live it." And I guess maybe I should back up for a second, because a lot of times people equate their purpose with their job or their profession. That doesn't have to be the case. Your job could be over here. It's something you do to pay the bills, but your purpose in life is to write or to paint or to volunteer or to coach or whatever it is. And I always tell, especially young people, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
It's interesting. As we were sitting here talking, I was reminded of a guy who lived in downtown Seattle, and he was a tuba player, and they used to call him Tommy Tuba, and he was homeless, and he would sit on a particular bench in Pioneer Square every day, and he would play the tuba. And that was what he felt was his calling. That made him happy. And unfortunately, he was killed by a couple of guys that are now in prison for it. But um, because apparently they couldn't stand the fact that this homeless guy was happy and was self-contained. But so it doesn't matter if you are a CEO. I've known lots of CEOs who are married 2, 3, 4 times. They've got lots of money and they've got a nice car, but they're not happy. They're not happy in life. They're not doing what they choose to do. And I know in your work that and by the way, we're talking with Terry Tucker. Let's get your website out real quick while we can.
Motivationalcheck.com.
Now there's an easy one. And he has been, for those of you who, I get the biggest kick out of some people because Terry, what they'll say is, well, sure, he's a motivational coach. His life has been rainbows and cupcakes his whole life, and he's never had to struggle like I'm struggling. My life is so hard, and he's a motivational coach. He's happy. It must be easy. You've been fighting cancer for 10 years.
I have. I've been fighting a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma, which most people think of as a sun disease. You're too much exposure to the sun. My form of melanoma appears on the bottom of the feet and the palms of the hands. And I sort of joke, I never remember, as a kid laying out with my feet up in the air. So how I got it on the bottom of my, my feet, I have no idea. But that cancer has led me to be on a drug for 5 years that gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And that was not a cure. That was just to try to keep the disease at bay. 2018, I had my left foot amputated. 2020, I had my left leg amputated. And I found out I had tumors in my lungs. And I'm still being treated for those tumors in my lungs now. So, and that sounds like a dark and ugly journey. And it certainly has been. But I'll tell you this, cancer has made me a better human being.
How so?
It's made me appreciate the things in life and realize what's really important. It's not the job, it's not the money, it's not the power, it's not the prestige. None of that stuff comes with you at the end. What comes with you at the end is love, the love you put in the world. And I remember when I was a young kid, I admired a man by the name of John Wooden, who was a coach at UCLA.
The best coach of all time.
Yeah, an amazing man. And I was almost like a disciple of Wooden. I hung on every interview. I read everything in Sports Illustrated about him. And I remember one day I was listening. I was probably 13, 14 years old. I was listening to an interview he was giving on TV. And I literally had a pad of paper and pencil in my hand, and I'm writing stuff down. And it's the end of the interview, and the commentator asks him, of all the things that you've done, what do you think is the most important thing that you want your players to learn? And, I'm looking for some great X's and O's and stuff like that, and he says, I want my team to understand that the most important, or my teams to understand the most important thing in life is love. And I'm like, no, coach, come on, give me some good X's and O's. I'm like, no, love. What are you talking about? We're guys. We don't talk about love and stuff like that. No, we need X's and O's. But it was, I want my players to understand the importance of loving what they do for a living, loving themselves, loving the people that in their lives. I mean, love is really the foundation of everything we should do in life. If you don't like your job, if you don't love your job, then find another job. And I know that's easy to say, but at the same time, if you don't love what you're doing, why are you doing it?
There are myriads of reasons for that. None of them are good, quite frankly. And speaking of which, you can't take it with you. There was a guy that I don't know if you've heard this story, but there was a guy that swore that he was going to take everything with him when he died, and he made his wife promise that when he died, she would make sure that everything went with him. So when he did pass away, and he was there and had an open casket, and she did that. She wrote a check and put it in the casket. So technically he took everything with him, but he really didn't, because he couldn't cash the check.
I don't think the First National Bank of St. Peter was open up there,
No, that's the thing, is that I have a good friend who said to me, when you pass away, I want you to spend your last dollar right before you do that. I don't, I want you to live your life completely and fully. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is to live my life as best I can, as fully. And I know that you're doing the same thing. And it's been hard, but you've got such a remarkable spirit. Where does that come from?
I think a lot of things. I think it started with my parents. I'm the oldest of three boys. Yeah, you can't tell this from looking at my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall. Played basketball in college. I have a brother that's 6'7" who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame's baseball team. Another brother who's 6'6" who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. My dad was 6'5". So I sort of joke that when we were growing up, if you sat behind our family in church, not a prayer's chance you're going to see anything that was going on. But our 5'8" mother was the boss. It didn't matter how big, tall, strong we were. Whatever mom said went. And my parents taught us the value of family, and supporting each other and caring for each other and loving each other. And my parents practiced what I call the sort of divide and conquer parenting, where it's like, all right, Terry's got a game over here, dad's going to go to that, Larry's got to practice over here, mom's going to go to that, and my parents did everything to support us. And I remember when I graduated from college, I had a job, and I told my dad, my youngest brother was in high school. I said, I'm not going to Brian's game tonight. He had a basketball game. And my dad looked at me and he's like, yeah, you are. I'm like, excuse me? I'm a man, I have my own job, and he said, you're going to the game. I said, no, I'm going to go work out. He's like, no, you're going to the game. And he reminded me, he's like, this is what our family has been about carrying each other, supporting each other, loving each other. Your brother needs you right now. And my dad was right. And I found another time to go work out, and I went to the game, but I think it started there. It certainly has started with, my parents taught us about the importance of faith, of being part, of something that's bigger than yourself. That was something I learned during team sports. You realize on a team that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life.
It really is. It really is. Now, I was an athlete. I know it's hard to figure that out now, but when I was young, I was an athlete, and I was on a football team. And if you're on a football team, you're one of 11, and yet you're all one, because if one fails, you all fail. If one succeeds, you all succeed. And it's. I think that is a great metaphor for life. If we all work together to succeed, and to help each other, and to work together for each other, we'll succeed. If we don't, we're not going to.
We will. And Mike Krzyzewski, the former coach of Duke, who just retired this year, used to have a saying, and it fit great with basketball, because there's 5 players on a basketball team, and he used to use the fist concept that, individually, our fingers are not very strong, but collectively you put those five fingers together, like you put five guys on a basketball or five women on a basketball team, you put them together, now you've got a fist, and a fist is a whole lot stronger than an individual finger. So you're right that we don't. It's hard for us to get things done individually. I remember I read a book a couple years ago called Legacy. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read it, but it's an amazing book. It's about they're called the All Blacks because their uniform is all black, but it's about the New Zealand national rugby team.
Oh, they made a movie. They made a movie about that.
No, that was South Africa with Matt Damon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was Nelson Mandela and Matt Damon in that. But this is about the New Zealand national rugby team, who, by all accounts, are the most successful sports franchise in any sport in any country of all times. And part of the book was about how they recruit or hire, players. And I'll be honest with you, don't know anything about rugby, so I'm not even going to try to pretend. But what I thought was interesting is you would think that a team of that caliber, they are hiring for technical expertise. I'm a great rugby player at whatever position I'm being recruited for. And to an extent, they do. But the two things that I found amazing about them in terms of how they hire is the first thing is character. What kind of person are you? How do you handle defeat? Do you go home and kick the dog and punch your wife? Or, hey, what did I learn from this? And how can we get better? And the second thing was humility. And I thought back to how many job interviews I've had where I've gone into it where it's like, man, I better have all the answers to all these questions. And what they feel is that you don't need to have all the answers because you individually won't have the answers. Us collectively, us as a team, will figure out the answers. So you're right. It's not about us. It's about us collectively, not us individually.
It is impossible for one person to rise to the level that they are capable of without support.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have a support team.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no such thing as an overnight success, despite what all these people think. It's like I just burst onto the scene and here I am. It's like, no. Number one, you probably failed a ton before you got there. And number two, you've got to have that support system, whether it's a family, whether, it's other people within the organization, whatever it is. We don't do life by ourselves. We're not good at it by ourselves. We're better at it together.
My favorite story is about a group of guys that were considered to be an overnight success. In 1964, they were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they burst onto the scene. I read their biography. They spent years in Hamburg, Germany, in a sweaty little club, working 6 to 8 hours a night on stage, 6 days a week, literally for years, to learn their craft. Nobody does it all by themselves. Nobody's an overnight success, and they had each other to rely upon and to work together, and they became a fabulous unit because of that. That's really is what you're talking about, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you look at teams and things like that, whether it's a sports team or whether it's a business or whatever it is, nobody does it by themselves. And nobody can do it by themselves. And I go back to my faith, and it says in the Bible, God made man, and then God realized, not good for man to be alone. And so, put man to sleep, take man's rib, make woman. And I don't think that was so much about, husband, wife kind of situation, as much as it was, we need each other. We're better together than we are separately. We can get more done. We can accomplish more than thinking, hey, it's all about me. I've got all the answers. Well, I mean, I'm 61 years old. I don't have all the answers, and I don't think I'm ever going to have all the answers. So it scares me sometimes when people, especially younger people, think, hey, I figured it all out. It's like, well, good. Write a book because I like to read it because I haven't figured it out yet.
Well, I'll figure it out when I get to Ask St. Peter.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
I got to ask you about this, sir. Can we, you know, because
Yeah, I'm gonna be
oh,
taking some notes. What do you got here?
exactly. Oh, and by the way, group that I was talking about that went to Hamburg, they're the Beatles. I didn't mention that, and there are people that are going, "Who would that be? I don't know who that is." But anyway, so I just had to point that out. But it's even though with all the struggles that you've had, your passion and your energy is so high. You must have a great support system.
Oh, I
Do
do.
you?
I totally. It's just my wife and daughter, in our immediate family. My brothers are still with us, and my mom even is almost 87 years old, still with us. And I talk about what's gotten me here, which are my three F's, which are faith, family, and friends. And when I got cancer, we're great here in the United States. We start down a road towards a goal or something like that, and then we run into an impediment. Boom, we stop. Oh, no, sorry, I can't get around that. I've got to quit. But we just don't do that. We got to blame somebody. We got to find somebody to blame. And so people ask me when I got cancer, well, who do you blame? And I'm like, what do you mean? Who do I blame? I don't blame anybody. And then they knew I have a strong faith. Like, well, you must blame God. And I sort of joke. I'm like, I don't think God got up on a Tuesday morning, checked his to-do list, and said, Terry Tucker, cancer today. I don't think that at all. But what I do think God has done is given me the strength to get through that. So that's the faith component. And then my family, it's my wife and daughter. And I remember after I had my leg amputated and I had the tumors in my lungs, my oncologist wanted to put me on chemotherapy. And I looked at him and I'm like, is it going to save my life? He's like, probably not, but it might buy you some more time. And I was like, well, I was 8 years into this fight. And I was like, well, if the outcome's going to be the same, I'm not sure I want to, go through all that ugliness, but I'll go home and talk to my family. So I go home and I start telling my wife and daughter what's going on. And my daughter's like, all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's three of us. It's not like we got a board or something like that. It's like, so we end up sitting around the kitchen table and individually talking about how they feel about me having chemotherapy. And then my daughter's like, all right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy? And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, wait a minute. Am I getting outvoted here for something I don't want to do? But I remembered back when I was in the police academy, another hat that I wore, and our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we love the most to class. And as we were learning techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned you'll fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I took chemotherapy not because I wanted to, but because I love my family more than I loved myself. So that's family, faith, family, and then friends. I think when you get a chronic or a terminal illness, you really find out who your friends are. You really find out who the people are going to, be there with you in your corner. And, I always tell people, if you don't have people, your inner circle, I mean, if those aren't people that care about you, that love you, that support you, that uplift you, and probably most importantly, are willing to sacrifice their relationship with you to tell you the truth, then you need to get those people out of your life. I mean, I want people in my life that look at me like, Terry, you're kind of messing up here. But what do we do when that happens? We're like, oh, hey, you're not my friend anymore. No, those people are your friends. Those are the people who love you enough to tell you the truth.
And that's rare.
It is very rare.
A lot of us want to just get along to go along, and when you say you've got a cancer diagnosis, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then they pull back.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
And
they say, and I've done this, they say, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And you're like, well, I'm sorry, I got to go in the hospital and have my leg amputated. I don't have time to let you know. But the same things you need to do at your house, take out the garbage, go to the grocery shop and pick the kids up from school, walk the dog, are the same things I have to do at my house. So if you love me and if you care about me, don't ask, just get involved.
and so few of us do that.
Yeah,
Most of us just backpedal and just and it would be really good, and that builds a sense of community as well.
it does.
And
Absolutely.
by the way, I applaud your daughter. How old was she when she did this?
She was, so 2019. So she was in like maybe freshman year, sophomore year in college.
She's a bright girl. You've done a good job.
She's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy.
Good for her. And
So,
that's rare in and of itself, because not a lot of women get that into that position.
Well, no, unfortunately or fortunately, she got my height. So she's 6'2" and has an NBA three-point shot. So she went to the Air Force Academy to play basketball and ultimately, I mean, had knee surgery her freshman year, didn't play after that, but got a tremendous education. And now she's an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
We're
That's
very proud
and
of her.
by the way, in your resume, you've done a myriad of things, which is why it's important for you to still be here so that you can impart some wisdom. One of the things that you did, you were actually a hostage negotiator. Now, we've seen lots of movies. Bruce Willis comes to mind, and others, and Samuel L. Jackson, and others come to mind that were hostage negotiators. Is that a true portrayal in any sense of the word of what you see on the movies?
No, no,
I didn't think
and
so.
I get that question a lot, and I'll sort of tell you how it works, so you can kind of understand. It's definitely like we were talking about a minute ago. It's a team effort. Yes, there is one person that is negotiating with whatever the situation is, but then there's another negotiator who is sitting right next to that person with headphones on, listening to everything that's going on. They're not saying anything; they're listening, and then there's a group, that I used to call working the crowd. So they're out talking to maybe the mother or the girlfriend or whatever. Why are we here? What happened? What started this? Et cetera, et cetera. So as a negotiator, you may be talking to somebody and the person next to you will hand you a note, and the note will say, "Don't talk about his mother." Because what started all this and what the group found out was he had a fight with his mother, and he barricaded himself, and now he's got a gun, he's threatening to kill himself. So you will get a note that'll say, "Don't talk about his mother." Okay, good. So it's a team effort and how we go about doing this. Yes, there's one person negotiating, but could not do that by yourself.
Wait, unless you were psychic and knew what was in the guy's head, but that's hard to do.
Very, very.
So, so again, the concept of team,
Yeah,
and you, of course, you've heard that old expression. There's no I in team,
right.
and the team is paramount to your success. Whatever you're doing, even if you are just happy with what you're doing, but you need a sounding board. And by the way, it doesn't have to be somebody that you're married to.
True.
I have a good friend that I met 6 8 months ago, who's become a really good friend, and she is very okay. She's to a fault honest with me sometimes, but she's very honest with me, and I know that she does it from a place of positivity, caring, and love because she wants to see me succeed. And so as long as I know that and she knows that, then that is a good relate. And I implore everybody to have somebody like that in your life. I got two or three. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you can get in your life, keep those people around. And it's they're good for you. They're good for your mindset. Even when you're down, those are going to be the people that are going to lift you up. It's like, hey Terry, I know what your goals are. You're going down this road. That's not part of what you want. You're making a mistake. Hey, you should go over here. Hey, you're having a tough day. Let's talk about it. Let's go to lunch or breakfast or something like that. Those are the people you need in your life because they help you on so many different levels.
It is so true. And when you have got that support system, it's like when you were going to have chemo. I have always said, well, not always, but relatively recently, I have always said, if I get cancer and they want to do, I'm 64, if they want to do chemo and radiation and I might lose my hair. Wait a minute. But if you might, you might feel too late, sorry, but you might feel really bad and all that kind of stuff. And there's a real struggle in my mind as to whether or not I'd want to do it. Well, 3 years ago, my son had a daughter. Dang it. So now, because I have not seen that girl because he's in the Air Force and they were in Japan for 3 years. Now they're in London for 3 years. So I have yet to see her. And I would have to rethink my position because I'm the only grandparent left that she can associate with. And so it's really would be important for me to have a relationship with her. And that's worth sticking around for, I think.
And that goes back to purpose. I mentioned my dad was dying of cancer when I graduated from college, and he was in real estate, and he worked up till 2 weeks before he died. And I really believe that if he had not had a purpose, he had not been able to go, to the office 4 days a week or whatever it ended up being, that he would have died a whole lot sooner. And that's the same way I feel. And I sort of remembered that and sort of tucked it away. And then when I got sick, it's like, no, you can't just sit here and think about this and, oh, woe is me and how terrible this is. You got to, like, you know what? You're still alive. You're still breathing. As long as you're on this side of the dirt, there's still possibilities here, so absolutely, get out there and find your purpose. Even if you're, hey, I'm sick, I'm dying. Okay, that's fine. But you're not dead yet. You're still here today, and you can make a difference in somebody's life.
Absolutely. And I firmly believe that. And in fact, I had to retire medically because I fell a couple of times and had a couple of surgeries. And I had a choice. I could just sit around and or I could do what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I'm doing 8 to 10 podcasts a week. I get to talk to great motivational people like you, and I get to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that is what it's all about. And if you can do that, even if your life is destined, and as you and I both know, and we talked earlier, we're not in control of that.
Right.
We will die when we die. But if you can spend the last day, every day until that day, doing something meaningful for the planet, for others, for yourself, for your family, you will not have wasted that time, and it will have been a life well lived.
Absolutely. And I remember I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that was very simple, but it goes like this: when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life. And I think those are the key words in this thing. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm
Ooh,
looking for.
that's a really cool saying right there. Yes. So and that keeps you motivated and keeps you working.
It does. I mean, doing something that I feel I make a difference. I always say it's nice people like me that allow me to, me to come on to their show. And between our conversation, if we're going to make a difference in the life of somebody, then today's been a great day. And that's such a simple thing to do. It doesn't have to be, we all think there's got to be this grand, in order to make a difference, I've got to have this major impact. You don't. It's the small little things that you do for people. It's the kindness. It's the, hey, that's one thing as a negotiator, people were like, well, what happens if you think that that person is considering suicide, considering killing themselves? And I used to always tell people, if you feel there's somebody in your life who might be in that situation, ask them. And they're like, well, if I ask them, I'm going to put the idea into their mind. No, you're not. You're not going to do that. If you ask them, hey, are you thinking, we did it all the time as negotiators, like, hey, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of shooting yourself? Now, if they weren't, they'd be like, hey, no, you idiot. No, I'm not thinking of doing that at all. But if they were, you very well may have opened the door for them to step through to, oh my God, somebody cares. Somebody sees what I'm going through, even though I haven't been able to articulate it. And oh my God, you have no idea. You may have just saved their life just by asking. I mean, they're going to fire on you if that's not the case. But I'd rather err on that side than on, oh, I didn't say anything, and then they ended up hurting themselves.
I have a quick story that I'd like to tell if I can, which is right along those lines. And this personal story that happened in 2002. My sister-in-law, her name is Sandy, and she had a congenital heart defect, and her heart was actually backwards in her body. And because of that, they couldn't operate on her. And so they expected her to not live past her 20s. Well, she married my ex-wife's brother, and they had a nice life. But when she turned 40, things went bad, and she ended up in the ICU. And then 3 months later, she passed away. Well, my brother-in-law was a stoic young man, and he was not interested necessarily in being open and asking for help. My ex-wife was not interested in offering such help because that would have been made him weak, and the father was kind of distant as well, And so he's sitting in his home alone, and he gets a bill for $500,000 from the hospital. He has problems at work. He has a short-term relationship, and the girl steals from him and then leaves him. He doesn't feel like he's got anywhere to go, anybody to turn to. So he turned the gun on himself and killed himself. And that was my father-in-law's responsibility. It was my ex-wife's responsibility and my responsibility, that he felt so alone and felt had no recourse. So, and the reason I tell that story is because people need to know that the life that you impact, just like you were saying, is important. And if you reach out to somebody who you know to be in pain, and I would even advocate, if to ask them, are you okay? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling like you're not going to be okay? And let's get you some help. Let's get you the help that you need. Um, that would make a whole lot more sense than letting somebody sit there and end up feeling like they had nothing else to do but take their own life.
It's sad. It really is. And I don't think we realize how much our lives have an impact on people that we have no idea who those people are. And I'll give you a quick story. I had one of my nurses that takes care of me when I get my infusions. When I first met her, she was already a nurse, but she was in training on the unit. And a couple of months ago, she was taking care of me by herself. And she's relatively young. She's about 25 years old. And she said, Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I'm a little uncomfortable telling you. And I mean, I didn't really know how to respond to that. And I'm like, well, sounds like I would like to hear that, but I hope you find the courage to tell me that. And eventually she did. She worked up the courage. And she said, when I first met you, she said, I was going to get out of nursing. She said, I'd had a very good friend of mine die. I was in a very dark place. I talked to my mom and dad. I was going to quit nursing and I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you. And I see all the ugliness that you go through for your treatments, 5 days a week and throwing up and shaking and all that. And I read your story. And she said, having studied all that, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had had a positive impact on her. So I always ask people, who's out there that, Kevin, who's out there who, I would give anything to be in Kevin McDonald's shoes. I would give anything to be in Terry Tucker's shoes. And I'll go back to John Wooden, a basketball coach at UCLA who had a great saying, and I remember it: a careful person I want to be, a little person follows me. I dare not go astray for fear they may go the same way. So I think it's important for all of us to remember that our lives have an impact, have a touch point on people that we don't even know who they are. And I'm not telling you to live a life that's not true to yourself. You need to do that. But always remember there's somebody who's looking at you and thinking, boy, I'd trade places with that person in a heartbeat. So our lives impact so many people we have no idea about.
It truly is amazing. Now, when I was doing this before, way back in 2003, I had a story of somebody that I really impacted their life. But I also drove a city bus in Seattle for 12 years. And I impacted as many people driving a city bus, either positively or negatively. I had the ability to choose how I was going to interact with all these people. And that we're talking people in three-piece suits. We're talking people, homeless people. We're talking drug addicted people. We're talking people that of all stripes. I made it my mission because I felt like, and we all have the ability to do this. You may say something to somebody in a positive way. You will not know what the impact is, but you may be the only person to talk to them nicely all day long. And they will remember that long after that interaction is over. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to remember what that quote from Maya Angelou was about. It's not what you say, or people won't remember what you say. They won't remember what you do. They remember how you make them feel. And
Yes.
that is so true. I don't remember what he said, but boy, he said something that just kind of resonated with me, and he cared. It seemed like he cared about me. And you may have just been like, "Hey, how's it going today?" And you're on with your day. But to that person, man, that was like you just gave him $1,000 or something like that.
Oh, exactly. And we all have the ability to do that. And it doesn't take being a special, doesn't take being a radio host. And I had as much of an impact as a bus driver
Yeah.
as I do doing this. And it's funny. There was a kid that used to get on the bus because he loved buses. I don't know. He was on the spectrum somewhere,
Mhm.
and but he just loved buses. He loved riding the bus. He knew every route. He knew every bus type, and he loved being on the bus. And so I let him act as conductor on some trips. So like I would go from Kent to Green River College in Auburn, which is about 7 or 8 miles, had a bunch of stops. He would announce every stop. He would get off at every stop. He would welcome people on. It was the funniest thing to watch him do that and to be nice to people and to have them go, "Why is he being nice to me?" And anyway, so he that was something that just made his week, and so it became a thing. And it got to the point, Terry, where when he wasn't on the bus, there were kids that would go like at the college and pick up the same kids every day. They'd go, where's your assistant?" And I said, "Well, he had something else to do today." He said, "Oh, that's too bad. I was looking forward to seeing him." It was and so that had an impact on his life, but it also had an impact on, and it's contagious.
It
We can
is.
do this for each other, and it can grow, and it can become, and it doesn't have to be, a great big motivational coach or a talk show host or anything else. It can be the simplest things, and a lot of us don't get that. How can we convince people that it's okay to do that?
I think it's kind of like everything else. People talk a good game, but for me, it's always what's your actions showing. What are you doing? And I think just need to live it. We need to, hey, I'm going to be nice to people. And by my actions every day, maybe you'll pick up on that. I'll never forget this. My first job out of college was at Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, at their corporate headquarters in Dublin, Ohio. And I used to, we're creatures of habit. I would get to work at the same time, and I'd ride up on the elevator with my secretary, and sorry, they called them secretaries back then. So, my secretary and one of the vice presidents, and the vice president was definitely not a morning person. He'd get on the elevator with his cup of coffee, go right to the back of the elevator, and stand there. And it used to drive my secretary crazy. And so one day she said to me, she said, "You know what? Every morning from now on, I'm going to say something to him. Good morning. How's it going? How's your day?" Or whatever. I want to force him to talk. And I mean, it went on for months. And I'm sitting, and I know what she's doing. And he would one word answer, "How you doing today, Mike?" "Fine." And that would be the extent of it. But over time, I mean, over like 6, 7 months, he eventually would get on the elevator and start being, "Oh, hi, Terry. Hi, Donna. How you doing?" It's like, oh my gosh, now he's talking to it and stuff like that. So it was really her trying to say, I'm pulling, I know there's a nice guy in there. I'm trying to pull it out. And she would do that. I mean, she could have said, "Oh, to heck with him. I'm just going to ride up with him in silence. And that's going to be the end of that." But I still remember that to this day. I remember being on those elevator rides with the two of them and just watching the gamesmanship go on.
And I'll bet you in his mind, he was thinking at some point in time, he thought, "Boy, I sure am being a jackass. This
Yeah,
person is trying to be nice to me every day, and I don't give her the time of day.
right.
That's not very nice." And then
No,
he decided that he was going to be an actual human being, and plus the fact that she was, not only was it a mission that she was on to get that done, but she wanted to show him that she cared.
yeah.
And so that was really important. What did you do for Wendy's, by the way?
Well, I started out as the very exciting field marketing trainee. I think my most successful business accomplishment was gassing up the company cars of the field marketing managers. I mean, I literally, making copies, all that stuff, and then progressed to. I eventually, when I left there, I was a new product marketing supervisor. So I got to be involved in the Wendy's day part when they put breakfast into their stores. Then they took it out, and now that's back in. We were looking at hot dogs. We did all kinds of different things that it was just a lot of fun. And I was also there, if you remember, when there was that little, 5 foot nothing older lady that used to walk around, "Where's the beef?"
Of course.
And so I was there during that time period. So it was It was amazing. I mean, her name was Clara Peller. She was a former beauty operator in Chicago who'd retired, had never been in show business before, and all of a sudden she's, on one of the most successful ad campaigns of all time. So
How did you find her?
I don't know. The advertising guys did that. I believe we had a national advertising agency, Dan Sir Fitzgerald Sample out of New York. They found her. I don't know how, but they're the ones who found her. And she, I mean, I think Ronald Reagan used that. Where's the beef line when he was running for reelection and that. So
There are people that were alive at the time. We all remember I can vividly picture her little 5 foot frame going, "Where's the beef?" And, and she was just incredible. So but you're right, that was one of the biggest ad campaigns of all time, and it actually raised Wendy's sales quite a little bit.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, the Academy Awards are, what actors get for great, performances. The Clio is an advertising award. People get Clios for great commercials and stuff like that. And we had several Clios just from that ad campaign. And yeah, it really boosted sales. And unfortunately, right after that, the bottom fell out of the fast food industry. And I saw the writing on the wall and figured it was time to move on. So.
Well, you have done so many things in your life, and from being a cop and working at Wendy's and doing that, and you've done a lot of different stuff, and um, it's what was your favorite thing that you've done?
Oh, absolutely, being a policeman. My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. So he was in Chicago during Prohibition, when alcohol was
Oh, gee,
outlawed in the United States during the
with
Great
Al
Depression.
Capone and all those guys.
Yeah, and exactly, and was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun, taking a homicide suspect back to the lockup. It was not a serious injury; he was shot in the ankle, but I mean, let's face it, trauma medicine in 1935 was a whole lot different than it is in 2022. And so when I expressed an interest in going into law enforcement, my dad was, "Oh, absolutely not. You're going to college. You're going to major in business. You're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after." And that's what my dad wanted me to do. It wasn't what I felt my purpose, my passion was. And so I had a choice when I graduated from college. My dad was sick and dying. I could be like, sorry, dad, I'm going to go blaze my own trail and be a cop. Or out of love and respect for you, I will go into business. So my first two jobs, first one was at Wendy's, second one was as a hospital administrator. And I sort of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away, and then I followed my own dreams. So I was a 37-year-old rookie police officer, which by most accounts is pretty old to start that kind of work.
Well, and at 6'8" to
Yeah,
boot.
yeah.
Did, did you drive around in a squad car?
I did. I had a partner. We both were out of the same academy class. We probably for about 4.5, 5 years. We were in a marked car in uniform, doing radio runs, DUIs, all that kind of stuff. And then I went and I know you're going to find this funny. Then I went and became an undercover drug investigator. And
Oh,
people.
you're inconspicuous.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I never changed my appearance. I never grew a beard. I never grew my hair long. I never, I kept the same appearance because in that industry, and I'm sorry, illicit drugs is an industry. What motivates that industry is greed. And as long as you have money, you'll find somebody to sell you drugs. And that's what our unit was. We were a street level kind of unit. We went after people who were selling on the corner, and that would occasionally develop into something bigger, and we would get to work with the DEA and things like that, which we love because for example, like for me to charge you with a gun charge, I had to have the gun, and the gun had a function. It had to actually fire. So before I could charge it, I had to take it down to criminalistics and fire it and that kind of stuff. But for the feds, the feds are up on a wiretap with you, for example, and you mention the word gun, that's a federal gun charge. They never have to see the gun. They never have to collect the gun. Nothing. That's why you hear all these it's an 80 count indictment. Yeah, the guy said gun 50 times, 50 of those are federal gun charges, so we loved working with the feds because it was a lot easier to get people put away, to, serious people, real people that were really, really pushing a lot of dope and hurting a lot of people. So
And I'm well, and number one, I'm glad you're not a cop today. It would be a very it has changed over time.
yeah.
And there is I was reading an article yesterday about a county in Texas that 101 kids under 18 have been shot and killed in the last 3 years there. What is going on? Do you have any idea, Terry?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of things. I think it's the breakdown of the family. The fact that there isn't somebody there to tell the kids what to do. I mean, where do we get our morals? Where do we get our values? We get those from our caregivers. Now, who are those caregivers? And I worked. My partner and I were both white. We worked an entirely when we were running a beat in a car, marked car in uniform, an entirely black area. And you would pick up a 13-year-old kid in the middle of October on a Wednesday night and have to take him home for a curfew violation. And you have to cite somebody for that to go to court. Well, you want to cite mom. Well, he doesn't live with mom. Dad's in jail. Mom is addicted to crack and not in the family. His 85-year-old grandmother is taking care of him. And you just look at that, it's like you don't stand a chance. So I think the breakdown of the family is one issue, and the other issue is just the availability of guns. I remember my very last night in uniform. I was a sergeant. We got to run for somebody shooting outside of an apartment building, and we get there. We get to the apartment building. There are three guys playing video games. None of the guys lived in that apartment. And so, we call them out, we run them, we search them, no guns, no nothing. We search the apartment, no guns. And right before we left, I said, I just have a feeling that they're here. I just don't know where they are. So I'm like, let's take one more sweep. And we did. And there was a drop ceiling. And in the drop ceiling were 5 guns. And so, I mean, we can't prove that those guys were the ones shooting or anything like that. So we took the guns to confiscate them. And the night chief was a captain who'd been on for like 30 years. And I remember we were processing the guns and he came into the district and he said, Terry, when I started, we were lucky if we'd get 1 gun off the street a week. You guys get 4 or 5 guns a night. So the amount of guns I think is proliferated in this country. And the bad guys don't care about gun laws. They don't, I mean, look at all the crime in Chicago. They have some of the toughest gun laws in the United States. So I think it's breakdown of the family. I think there's more availability of guns, and life is too cheap anymore. I don't like what you said. Boom, I'll shoot you. I don't care. What? I mean, when I was growing up, if you didn't like what something, you got in a fight or something, but you didn't kill the person.
Right. Right. Times have changed.
Yeah.
There are near as I can count. It's taken me a while to do this, by the way. But there are like 336 million people that live here in the United States, and we have 390 plus million guns, give or take. And and you're right. It's the breakdown of the as a former bus driver, I can tell you, there were so many times that I would have 3 women and they'd be toting 5 or 6 kids, not a man anywhere. And you gotta appreciate a woman who's trying to raise that number of kids by herself,
Yes.
and you've got the dad who is either in jail or off making more kids, and doing silly stuff like that. And it's I think that we as a people need to come back to reality and say that we need to take care of each other and to work better at making sure that the kids don't get, because I can't tell you the number of teenage kids that would get on my bus and wouldn't pay and were difficult and that kind of stuff because they could, and stuff, and there was no mom at home necessarily and stuff. So we really here have got some interesting problems we have to deal with. But I digress because this is Positive Talk Radio. And we're not supposed to talk about stuff like that. But because of your background as a cop, I just wanted to touch bases with you. But I think that if we all work together and we bring all of this information out of what we can do together to make things happen. As an example, Here is a great story. Can I tell you this one real quick?
Sure.
I interviewed a gal last Thursday. She does a group called 100 Women of Snohomish County. And these women, what they do is they get together 3 times a year. Each of them gives $100.
Okay.
They take this $100 and then they pick 3 charities, and then they pick the winner of the 3 charities. They put all the charities in a hat, and there's these 501c3s,
Mhm.
and then they pick out the charities, and then they award them this money. Now they don't take any money out. They're not a charity themselves.
Mhm.
So what they do is they present this charity with like a bunch of checks and cash and stuff for them to use, because all they are is acting as the conduit.
Mhm.
And they get together, and the last time they bought backpacks for kids, full of food, because the kids weren't eating because they were either homeless or they had no money. They weren't eating anywhere but school.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable when we get together, and this group is not even a 501c3 that is not making any money from this, is doing this out of the goodness of their heart. In the last 2 years has raised $102,000 for
Wow.
good at $100 a time.
That's
So
amazing.
that gives me hope that we can work together to really make a difference and to make it happen for folks. And that's I just wanted to tell that story because we told the bad story. I wanted to tell a good one.
No, you're right. I mean, we can do so much together. And that's one thing I learned as a negotiator is the importance of listening and not listening to respond, but listening to understand. And we're all guilty of this. It's like, hurry up, Kevin, say what you're going to say because I want to get my 2 cents in versus, well, Kevin, okay, I understand what you just said, or I heard what you just said. I may agree with it. I may not agree with it, but help me understand where you're coming from. And if we do that, that's a dialogue. That's connecting with each other, as opposed to we're just screaming at each other. When we're both screaming at each other, I can't hear what you're saying, you can't hear what I'm saying, nothing gets accomplished. But if we listen to understand, we can get so much done because we make that connection with each other.
There's an old saying that says, there's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that you can actually listen more. And listening, I was in sales management for a long
Mhm.
time, and I've learned that listening is an art form,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, including my sales team, and I would have to coach them on this, they were listening to respond
Yeah.
or to react. They weren't listening to absorb the information and then make an informed, like, and then say, so what I heard you say was, and then repeat what they heard. Is that right? Because a lot of times we speak and we don't necessarily say the things that we really mean to say. But if you listen, you will be able to achieve a lot better than if you're just trying to respond to, this is how I'm going to respond to his argument, kind of thing. And it would work a lot better for us, I think.
Well, and it certainly sounds like. I mean, I've always been taught that the best salespeople are not necessarily the best talkers; they're the best listeners, and I think you
Correct.
just confirmed that. So,
They are. Well, if you can ascertain somebody's desires, needs, and wants, especially in business, if you're trying to fill that need with the product that you have, the best way to figure that out is by them telling you what they need.
right,
And if you're not listening, you don't know what you need. You're just trying to sell them something they might not need
right,
or might not be a good fit. And
right.
so you're right. No, that's absolutely true. So, by the way, we've been talking with Terry Tucker, and you can go to motivationalcheck.com, right?
Yes, sir.
And you need to talk to him because you are available for for you to coach
I
today.
am available to coach. I'm available to speak. Yeah, I'm starting a membership program around my book. Yeah, I'm kind of busy right now, too, in addition to being treated for cancer every third week. So,
Well, and just for those of you that are just joining us or didn't catch the whole thing, Terry's been fighting cancer for 10 years. He's continuing the good fight. He's doing remarkable, even though it hasn't been easy for him. He's got a good support group, and he's fighting the good fight. And I really, I wish and pray for you the life that you want to live for the rest of your life.
And I appreciate that. I mean, it means a lot to me when people say they pray for me. It's not just some, oh yeah, right. That means something to me. I mean, it gives me strength. So thank you for that.
And everybody that's listening will also be sending you positive energy, and because you are one of those, you're one of those people that we need to keep around,
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
because you're a good man. You're a
Thank
good
you.
man, and you've had a full life, and you've done a lot of things, but you you have all this. This is the thing that kills me. We spend our entire life acquiring all this wisdom, all this experience, and then one day, I used to do something called family legacies, where I'd interview older folks,
Mhm.
and the innate um, confidence and the ability that they have, and the experience that they've gained over time is invaluable. And then we lose that, and then we have to, so it's great that you are working to impart your wisdom on people, because you can help people.
I try. I mean, you think back, to the Native American people. I mean, they valued ancestry. They valued, the elders in their community and things like that. And I do podcasts all over the world. And in the United States, ancestry not so much a big deal, but in a lot of countries, it is. My grandparents set the table for my parents. My parents set the table for me. Now I'm setting the table, for my daughter and her generation. So, I mean, if you think about it that way, I mean, you really want to ask questions as a young person, get information, get knowledge. Don't think you know it all. I didn't know it all when I was young. I don't know it all now, but I know a whole lot more.
I've always said, if I could just know what I know now when I was 20.
Yeah,
then
exactly.
Oh man. Think of the things that you could do. By the way, you do other podcasts, do you now, huh?
I do. I've probably been a guest on, I don't know, 400 or 500 podcasts around the world.
What do you think? How do I
I
rate?
think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
No, I really do. I mean, it's engaging. It's having conversations is I think what people like. It's the ones that I find the boring ones are question answer question answer question. No, I mean if we can engage and play off of each other, then that's what people want to hear. They want to hear a conversation, not a question and answer session.
Well, and my job is to just bring it out in you, and you make my job extraordinarily easy,
Well, thank you.
because you are, and I really wish you the best.
I
And but
appreciate it.
now it's time for me to step aside and to give you a moment to say whatever you would like, whatever's on your mind.
How about if I end with a story?
That would be great.
Okay. Always been a big fan of westerns growing up. Mom and Dad used to let me stay up and watch Gunsmoke and Bonanza, and my favorite was Wild Wild West. 1993, the movie Tombstone came out, and it starred Val Kilmer as a man by the name of John Doc Holliday and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now,
My
Doc
favorite
Holliday and
movie of
Wyatt
all
Earp,
time.
pardon me?
My favorite movie of all time.
Oh yeah, great movie. Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday were two living, breathing human beings who walked on the face of the earth. They're not made up characters for the movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much Doc Holliday was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt Earp, his entire adult life, had been some form of a lawman. So these two men from entirely divergent backgrounds somehow come together and form this very close friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc Holliday is dying of tuberculosis at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from where I live. The real Doc Holliday died in that sanitarium, and he's buried in the Glenwood Springs Cemetery. And Wyatt, at this point in his life, is destitute. He has no money, has no job, he has no prospects for a job. So every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time that way. And in almost this last scene in the movie, the two men are talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, when I was younger, I was in love with my cousin, but she joined a convent over the affair. But she's all I ever wanted. And then he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? Wyatt kind of nonchalantly says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life. And get on with living yours. Kevin, you and I probably know people who are sitting out there listening to us. They're like, well, when this happens, I'll have a normal life. Or when that occurs, I'll have a successful life. Or when this arises, I'll have a significant life. I guess what I'd like to leave you with is this: don't wait. Don't wait for life to come to you. Get out there, find the reason you were put on the face of this earth, live that reason with your unique gifts and talents. And at the end of your life, if you do that, I'm going to promise you two things. Number one, you're going to be a whole lot happier. And number two, you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
That is a terrifically positive statement for you to make, and if people would follow that, we'd be so much better off. I was interviewing a gal not too long ago, and I got a phone call, and the lady said, I'm thinking about following my passion and really doing something that I really, really, really want to do. And just, well, why aren't you? She said, well, I got Social Security and I can live on my Social Security, but I've got this second job, and it just kind of adds to it, so I can travel a little bit and stuff. Is that what you want to do? No, I don't want that job. I don't want to do that. Why aren't you? Well, I'm 70 years old. And he said, you're 70 years old. If not now, when? Are you going to wait till you're 80? Go live your life, make a difference, have fun with it, do what you choose to do. And as this young person says, don't wait, do it today. Terry Tucker has been our guest. It is, I got to tell you, my friend, it is my pleasure to interview you. Will you come back? And I want to keep tabs on you, see how you're doing.
I would love to, Kevin. I've enjoyed talking with you as well, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'll tell you what, young man, you take care of yourself and make sure that and I know you do this, you're going to make a difference every day in somebody's life. And that is so cool.
I appreciate it.
And I thank you so much. You wait right there. I'll be right back. Thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of kmmedia.pro. Please visit our website, oddly enough, named kmmedia.pro, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to each other, because each other's all we've got.